Hey everybody, this is the Drop the Beat podcast. My name is Charles Laurita.
And I'm Will Sarver.
And we want to thank you guys for listening to us both beat off together. Perfectly synced, I would like to think we're doing it. And hopefully you guys are beating off at home as well. Will, how's it beating over there? How's it hanging? Honestly, I should ask.
Well, it's definitely hanging, but I think we're since we're doing this, via Skype, it's kind of hard to sync up. I think there's a slight delay from what I'm seeing on my end.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm trying to offset my beating, but I think then you're following my offset beating, and it's just a mess. So it's kind of just like, we're gonna do our best to beat off together for the lovely people listening. Honestly,
that's all we practice.
I practice every day, multiple times.
Yeah.
So we'll
you
see.
Have to.
Oh boy. So what you up to? How you been over there? What's going on?
One day I'm gonna say something different and exciting, but
today is not that day.
It is not today, and I don't see it happening for a while. But hanging in, staying safe. How about you?
Well, everyone thinks because I have exciting facial hair that I am a fun person, and I'm not. I am very boring. And it's. I
agree.
Yeah. And it's just I'm working and doing it, and it's not great. But I'm getting progress on my goals. So that's fun, I guess, if that makes sense. I stopped saying progress on my work and saying progress on my goals. It makes me feel better. So I just kind of roll with that, you know what I'm saying?
You got to.
Oh, man. But hey, guess what, Will?
Hey, what?
We have a question today for us to answer in a long format on this podcast. Someone wrote in.
That's really fascinating because we've been doing this for a while, and it's kind of like a new thing,
Yeah, no, I believe this is actually our first question ever.
Even though it's our, and I have a good memory, so
yeah. I was thinking, what is this?
This is our question here.
Is this our 15th episode? Good Lord!
It is. Oh wow.
We're losers. Oh, good God. But anyway, if anyone listening would like to write in a question for us to answer in a long format style such as this podcast, go to charleslaurita.com/contact, fill out the little form, put your name, where you're from, because we want to know where our little fan bases are starting to pop up from, and then write your question. And if we pick your question, we will send you a free Mischief shirt, so you don't have to be naked any longer. I thought so. I thought it was pretty nice, man.
So generous.
But, Will, we finally did it. We have an international question.
Oh yes, we've been waiting for this for a long
It's a very, very, very far away country. I hope I'm pronouncing this right. It's Canada? Canada,
definitely. Oh, yeah. Right.
But we have Pete writing in from Toronto, Canada, which is probably a little more north
cooling
than
off
us.
already.
I was going to say it's a little chilly. Thank you, Pete, for listening and writing in. And Pete said, this is going to be a really fun little topic right here. I like this. Pete says, I've noticed so many similarities in modern music lately, many of which seem to be lazy and taking the easy way out with writing and production. What is the deal with the lack of creativity and intricacy in music anymore? Thank you, guys. Loving the podcast. Thank you, Pete. We love you, and we love Canada, our neighbors to the north.
Yes, we do.
So much.
Wow.
So great.
That question, Pete, come on now. You're setting us up. Pete, you're going to get us
in
dangerous
trouble
territory here.
We've been trying to keep it safe for a long time, and now and Pete's just kind of poking the metaphorical bears, which is fine.
But you have to, especially on our very first question of this podcast.
Yeah. Well, duh. Yeah, it's our first episode ever.
So
apparently.
Pete's setting the bar high.
He is. Next, people are going to ask us to write something on air, and that's going to be the next question, which is not a good question, but it would take up the same amount of time. But so, if we're talking in terms of music feeling lazy and lack of creativity, there's kind of one big thing that people have to realize, and I never noticed this until recently, and that would be that eventually we will understand our parents' taste in music, not so much what they listen to, but how they go about it, because there is this kind of way where your music maturity only gets to a certain point, where at a certain point you just don't understand or comprehend modern music. And that's, it would be like if your grandmother was to listen to something from your childhood, or if you're, now it's happening to us where we're listening to something from the newer generations, and we're just like, this doesn't make sense, this isn't good, but everyone likes it. And it kind of just falls in line where it's you like everything before you, and then to a certain point you kind of just stop and you kind of just try to find things similar to whatever the most recent generation of things you like. So for me, it's the 90s. So any bands that have that 90s sound or that kind of feel, I gravitate towards. So that's a weird thing to kind of realize. Have you ever noticed that, Will? Where it's like your music taste just kind of stops at a certain point, and now it's you relate with your parents, because parents being like, we don't like this young people music, and it's like, well, the young people music was what we grew up with, because that was our young people music, and if that makes any sense at all, I don't really know.
It does, and I never thought about it that way, and I never really took the time to think about it, but it does kind of like drop off at a certain time.
Yeah, it totally does.
And then you're right, you start to sound like an old person. I don't like this music anymore.
I don't get the young people music.
Yeah, exactly. But no, you're exactly right. It kind of it does kind of taper off or come to an abrupt stop for some, but yeah. I think, we're definitely at that point now where the newer stuff is really, it's getting difficult for me to kind of comprehend and enjoy.
Or appreciate, I guess.
Appreciate it, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm an old soul, and I know you are too, so...
I've been known to be.
The older stuff is really what I enjoy the most.
Yeah.
But it every decade or so it comes in waves and changes.
Yeah, of course.
It has, the 90s had a sound, the 80s had a sound, the 70s, and so on. And, this is just another, another change. And I just think, I don't know about you, but for me, I'm having trouble, hopping on the train here.
Well, I think the one thing too is that just the creativity definitely did go down, and everything has become simpler, because it's not really about the actual music anymore. It's about the marketability, which I've realized, and it's, granted, every era has some lower talent music thing. Like every decade of music has had what you call the teen idol. We have like the Biebers, the Justin Bieber was the teen idol, or like Aaron Carter if you're going earlier. They had that in the 50s, and they had that in the 50s and the 60s. Though you had like Frankie Avalon and those guys, where they weren't really great, but they were cute, and they were easy marketable. They were marketable, very, very easy, and all the young girls liked them. And their music wasn't great. They were made in a lab. It's one of those kind of things.
Yeah.
It's where they're made in a lab to compete. But so every decade kind of has that thing, but now it is kind of apparent, because even in the 2000s there were a lot of bands and artists I listened to where I'm like, wow, these guys are great, like this is really good. But now it just seems like the kind of quality just dropped off, and I honestly think it is a lot because of the internet and how music is found nowadays. I think everything just became simple because it's easy to listen to for younger people, because attention spans just dropped. Because think about, like, we're on Facebook, we scroll through, we watch 5 seconds of a video, we don't watch the whole thing, we keep going. You got to grab someone immediately.
Yeah.
A lot of the groups I don't even know, or bands or artists, I don't even know what they do. Like, their music is never their first forefront thing. It's always about their marketability, whatever crazy stunt they did. Like, the thing I always say is, if you think of any modern person, do you think of their music first? So if I said, do you think of Miley Cyrus, what do you think of?
Hannah Montana.
All right, that works. That's a safer one. I like that. That's a safer answer. That's good. Or anyone
music.
Like that. No, or if you think of Lady Gaga or Nicki Minaj or Cardi B or any of those guys, it's like the big heavy pop radio ones, but it's like you're not thinking of their music first. That's not the point. It's so they're getting tons of views, and the music, it takes a complete back seat. Also, it's with everything sounding the same, it's very easy for younger people to listen to. So when you're on Spotify or Apple Music or anything that is there to kind of advertise music, because that's how people listen to their stuff nowadays, they say, hey, you like this dude? You like Post Malone? Well, we got another dude who dresses just like him and sounds just like him. So that transition from listening to someone else is going to be so easy, not even going to matter. And that's literally what it is. And it kind of kills me to a point, because every decade has a sound. Everything does it. I mean, you could look at the doo-wop era from the 50s, where literally that had that sound because everyone is in cubicles with pianos in a building writing, and everyone hears everyone else. So everything had that one chord progression, or they're like 2 chord progressions out of the 50s like that. I get that. I understand that. But also you had just the songwriting value and the instrumentation and just the overall just this high caliber of talent for people turning that kind of stuff out. And it's weird, too, to look at. Every decade doesn't define their sound until halfway through it, because the first half of the decade you're still playing off of the sound of the previous decade. So I always hold the 90s near and dear to me. So I look at the first half of the 90s, like up to 95, sounded very much like the 80s still. And the 90s really didn't define its sound until 95 and after. And then the first half of the 2000s still sounds like the 90s, and then it defined its way a little after. So it's kind of one of those things, which is really, really weird. But what is your take with just kind of not so much the decade sound, but where we are right now? Do you think our modern decade of music, the little bit we've listened, do you think it has a sound? Do you think that pattern kind of just continues, or has that dropped off as well?
It's a good question. I mean, I guess it kind of has a sound, because it kind of is, to me, it sounds all very similar.
Yeah.
You know, just the way it's produced and how things are written, it's kind of cookie cutter. But I think what's probably important, at least in my eyes, is that, you know, it's like we're looking back at the 90s and the 70s and whatnot. You know, that stuff is, a lot of it's still relevant today and still listened to, and
that's a great point. Yeah.
Super popular. I find it hard to believe that the music today, I don't think people in the future will be looking back and listening back to it as, and I don't think it's going to be relevant. I don't think people are still going to enjoy it, and I don't think it's going to be popular in the future. You know, look at some of the big.
That's a great point.
Yeah, look at some of the big artists, you know, back in the day. They're still making T-shirts, you know, at Kohl's, you know.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, for these bands. But it's hard to find that type of person. There's only a handful in my eyes today that stand out, that I think are going to be long-term artists, you know, for the rest of their lives. Mm-hmm. It's just, there's just so few of that right now. I just don't think in the future we're going to be looking back at this point in time as being known for our music. I don't know. What do you think about that?
No, I completely agree. Because, I mean, a lot of it, the reason it's so popular is its shock value. I mean, that's literally, I'm not trying to shit on anybody, because obviously if you're out there making
I can hear it.
I'm wiping right now. I mean, honestly, if you're out there making a ton of money that I will never see in my life ever, it's kind of like, okay, that's fine. But at the same time, it is like, a lot of it's shock value. I mean, a lot of it's, you know, publicity stunts or crazy like music or whatever, or, you know, it's marketability because you're a pretty person and you get popular that way. But then when you really break it down, it's like, you're not writing your own songs. You're not, you know, very musically talented. You can sing okay. You know, it's all done in a studio afterwards, that kind of thing. And that's when I look at it, where it's like literally, you know, I have students bring in modern songs, and it's like, not that songs have to have 1,000 chords in them. You can have a 3-4 chord song, and that's great. Like, it can be done. I've done it, and it's fine. But it's just when everyone is the same and not in a good way. And there's so many just like weird modern trends, which I'm not too hip on, and which I think will definitely age it. There's this one trend. It's not even like the alternative girl voice, but it's like this little mousy girl voice that people do. And they'll have normal diction when they talk, but then when they sing, they'll have like this weird fake accent that they do. Have you ever heard that?
And the song
it'll be like a the bling 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 bling. and it'll be like a voice like that, and I'm like, what in the fuck is this chipmunk thing? But it's like it's in everything. Everybody has that voice, and it's like this weird, and it's like you automatically just start singing with this weird diction and pronunciation. It's like, what the fuck is this? Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, I remember like in the late 2010s, because we're in the we're not even in the 2 teens anymore, we're in the 220s, but in like the 2 teens and the 210s, the alternative girl hipster voice was very popular, and it was with all the alternative music. It made it, they wanted to sing like someone from the 1920s, so they had that kind of like breathy voice, like
the
that,
spacey, breathy voice,
and that died out immediately. You know, it was
Thankfully.
around for a while, but it died. That's like when you were saying about music being dated. Think of anything that has auto-tune, like when T-Pain started doing it, and then everything had it. Everything had it in it, and that's immediately dated. And you listen to it now, and you're like, "This is super corny," like, which is crazy because I know you and I have seen it, but T-Pain singing without auto-tune is phenomenal.
Ridiculous. Yeah,
never knew. I remember you were the one who showed me. It was the NPR Tiny Desk concert, and it was T-Pain, and you're like, dude, watch this. And I was like, no, I don't want to. And then it was him with no auto-tune. It was just him and a keyboard. And I was like, oh my God, his voice is fabulous. Why does he not do this? And it was because that was a gimmick, and it was more easily marketable. And it sucks because talent does take a back seat. Because who are they going to take? Are they going to take someone who is very, very talented, who looks like a normal person? Or someone who looks absolutely just bananas on stage in a giant crazy costume and can sing like a C+. You know, it is a shame how the modern market really, really changed like that. Like, I miss when you had your Joe Cockers or like some really ugly dudes like that, and they could sing fabulously, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I miss that, man.
I think T-Pain's a really good example as far as, like, you know, we're not saying that people in this day and age have no talent, you know, because T-Pain seriously has talent and is phenomenal.
Yeah.
It was just, he came up with something, you know, early on, and it stuck and it worked for him, and he made his money. But it's not that he's talentless and that's all he had to choose from. It was a tool that he used. So we're not saying, you know, that nowadays people don't have talent. It's just, I think you put it perfectly as far as it's not as creative. And, you know,
definitely not.
Music is art. It's supposed to be creative. And at least for like us, it's about quality over quantity. It's not about numbers.
1,000%. Yes.
Yeah, it's not about making money for us. We just want to put out the best product that we can produce. Yeah, and I think that's taken a back seat because it's all a numbers game now. It's all about monies and, you know, streams and things like that. So it's cookie cutter. People are trying to push them out.
Cookie cutter. That's the term. Yep.
Yeah, and the creativity and things like that are taking a back seat, like you said, and that's a shame. But for me, like, you know, probably similar for you as well. Like when we're, you know, listening to music, I'm trying. It's the creative stuff that gets me hooked.
Oh, of course.
It's how it's written. Not that it's, you know, it's not that it has to be the super technical music theory, crazy chord.
No. Yeah.
It's just the structure of it, the dynamics of it, you know, and that's the stuff. And how does it feel? Does it groove? Does it make me want to bob my head? Does it make me want to dance? That's the things that I look for. And I just don't see that as much today. Now there's a gem that pops up every now and then.
Of course.
But it's got a groove. But you know, I keep going back to the older stuff. But
well, like modern day, I know you and I are big Bruno Mars fans.
Right, and he's one of those ones that I was referring to earlier that is going to have a name in the future. People are still going to know who he is. He's still going to be relevant. He's going to be one of those people, and he already is. But
I mean, he's ungodly talented. He's also writing everything he does. There's a huge handful. I mean, not that people are songwriters. Like, everyone doesn't have to be a songwriter, but there's so many artists out there who don't write their songs, have no idea what their songs are. They're just kind of handed stuff, and it's like, you're pretty and marketable, make it work. That's the one thing, you know, like Snoop Dogg was saying in an interview, because I love Snoop. Everybody likes Snoop. I mean, he worked his ass off to get where he is. And he said, a lot of these rappers modern day, he goes, they just hand him a fur coat and chains and a ton of money and nice cars and women dancing everywhere. And that's their props. So it's like they could have come from nothing and they're just handed everything as a prop as for their character. He's like, where he actually had to work at that. Where it's like they were poor, they rapped about being poor. They sold a ton of records, now they're rich. They rapped about being rich. He was like, they didn't just get in the game and everyone hands you stuff and they're like, oh, you're rich now and this is your persona. Because it's like how many people in like the hip hop game now come out and they're just immediately like with nice cars and just tons of gold jewelry, and it's like, well, where'd this come from? And that's a great point that he made. He's like, it's a prop.
That's a great point.
I never thought of it like that before. Just with I don't know. I definitely value the talent side and the creative side, regardless of where it comes from. Whether you're an esteemed songwriter, or you're writing for other people, or you're just a musician and you're not writing any lyrics or anything like that. Like the one thing I always think of was there was the one Grammys. I mean, I don't take the Grammys very seriously anymore because
it's a joke.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have
let's be honest.
You don't have Stevie Wonder and Paul Simon or any of those guys doing any stuff or whatever. Yeah. So it's kind of like, But you have it was Beck won Album of the Year, and he was up against Beyonce, and everyone was floored that Beyonce didn't win. I remember Kanye West even like got up on stage and was ready to do some stupid thing.
Yeah, he was going to do his thing again.
And it's funny though when you look at it. You look at Beyonce's albums. Obviously, she's a very talented vocalist. I wish she did more stuff in the style of Love on Top, but that's just me because that sounds like a Stevie Wonder song. But hey, what do I know? Beyonce will never know who I am.
Not yet.
No, not yet.
Wait till she hears this one.
Oh boy. Well, she had one of her songs on the album had 28 songwriters on it, and it's just like, at what point is it still considered to be like esteemed music? Because you have that many people. You have one guy coming in changing one word and he gets a songwriting credit. You have 28 people. Where that Beck album won because there was one album credit and it was just him. He did everything from home. He wrote everything. He played every instrument. Like that's
unheard of.
That is incredible. That you don't see that anymore modern day. Like that's a huge deal.
And I think it's kind of, it might be eye-opening for some people as far as, they idolize and listen to some of these artists that really don't write any of their stuff. They're just being told what to sing or play. And there's a lot of that. I mean, what are your takes on that? Because you're a songwriter. I am not. I just hit things.
But what's hip, though.
Sticks.
You know what's good. I hit hard.
Yeah, you're my translator when I wanna get out something as far as songwriting related.
You're making it sound like you're a caveman. Christ.
Yeah. Oh, that's
me don't know what do.
I just bang drum.
Bang drum. I mean, I always like seeing the interviews with the artists where an interviewer will really stump them with a question where they'll kind of be like, ask them literally about like a chord progression or what their song, the nuts and bolts of the song, and a lot of them don't know. And I get it though, because that's the place where a lot of this music kind of stuff comes from, where it's not necessarily, again, they're not writing it, they're not doing the creative side of it. They're the pretty spokesperson, and everyone else is putting their stuff, like they're made in labs, a lot of these people, and which is kind of a shame, but there's also a place for that. I mean, you look at any point in musical history, they've always had that kind of thing. You had the Beatles, they made the Monkees in a lab. That's literally what it was, because it's like, this worked, we're going to do this one. I remember it was like Lady Gaga came out, and she was a huge hit. And then they were like, well, we're going to make Kesha, and she's going to be the same thing. Or we're going to try to get close, But that's the thing, though, with Gaga, though, is she does write all her stuff, and she is stupidly talented. And
she's terrific.
She would be an exception for me. I was always like, and she's the opposite. She's the one where I'm like, man, keep wearing all the crazy shit, because when she started to peel that back, her music started getting, like, kind of weird. And then she just came back with, like, her old school kind of, dance club album stuff. And I was like, okay, good. She's wearing weird shit again. And she's like a very talented individual with that, because she plays a ton of things and she writes a ton of things, and I think that's great. I don't know. I think there's just a very big separation of the people I do consider to be musicians, where they're like writing their stuff and writing their lyrics and performing it, and that's a big thing. But then when you like have like some granted, I love NSYNC and the Backstreet Boys, but it's like, don't call them musicians, because it's like, yeah, they have all their stuff. They have all their stuff written for them in hand. Like that's every year at the Grammys, someone on the red carpet, like, what do you think of being a musician here? And I'm like, don't throw that M word around like it's just nothingness, because it's like,
yeah, it gets thrown around a lot, unfortunately.
Because again, it's like, you know, Cardi B is hugely popular right now. You know, she's a big deal. Everyone likes her. She's fun. She's probably a fun person. She's got shock value going with literally everything. But it's when people come up to her on like the red carpet and ask her what it's like to be a musician, I'm just kind of like, well, me personally, I don't know. I'm not that. I don't know if that's a proper title. It's like, I don't know. That's just like a different level for me, for someone to be a musician. She don't get me wrong, I adore hip hop. Like I mean, again, I'm old school and I'm stuck in the 90s, because I think, you know, I mean, I go into the 2000s too, but just a lot of the writing was different. There was a lot of effort put in, where now it's like, it is all mumble rap and it is all triplet style.
Oh,
and that,
yeah.
Where everything is, and it's all that triplet pattern. And it's like, Apple Bottom Jeans did it and it was awesome. Like, that's the one exception, because that's like just the best. But now it's just like, everything is, it's especially for hip hop, it's just very lo-fi beats, where it doesn't sound like it's a night. It's just like, it sounds like, where it sounds like you just have all the highs turned down, and it's like
perfect.
that. It's just like, thank you. It's like I'm always listening. I'm like, dude, this guy just woke up. Like, they made him record this, and he just woke up. Like, that's just like super mumbly. But here's the thing, though, with music being objective, that's the best part. Is there's probably younger people who could argue me perfectly and be like, this is why it's good. This is why it's great.
Oh yeah, that's
whatever.
That's
I mean,
the
that's a
beauty of
good
it.
thing. I mean, I have talked to younger people about it, and they don't really have good arguments with it, but, you know, it's whatever, because they'll be like, I'm going to show you 5 different rappers, modern day, and they're going to be great, and I'm like, they all sound the same, and then I'll pull out, like, the Fugees or Lauryn Hill, and I'm like, this is what it's supposed to be, because there's artistry and it's poetic value. Now it's not just, like, I don't know what the fuck any of these guys are saying, like, it sounds like such an old person, but I'm just like... And it's just like, the production value is so much different, which I know you and I always talk about, where now it's a lot of MIDI stuff and a lot of DIY stuff. I mean, even as like a hip hop standpoint, what is your take on just like the modern production value for, I mean, hip hop specifically, but any other kind of modern music? How do you feel about it? Because you're a huge, you know, studio nut like I am, so it's like, even more so than I am. So it's kind of like, you know, what is your take on it, where it's like, you know, people are making these massive hits and literally doing not a whole lot?
Yeah, I think that's maybe one of the downsides, is the advancement in technology, because literally everything can be done on a laptop anywhere.
Yeah.
And there are some, you know, we mentioned it before about, you know, some of the guys that do this type of stuff that are they're just phenomenal, and they're super talented. But there's also a lot that are not on that level, and it's the same. It's the same.
You say it so much nicer than I do. I'm such an asshole when I talk about it.
I'm trying. I don't want to sound too negative, you know, but it's really, you know, the software does everything for you. You know, it's the same beats that are coming out, and it really doesn't take much to put them together and to really think about them, because the program is doing most of it for you.
That's true.
So it's not, you know, it's not like the Timberland days, the Pharrell and the Neptune days, where when they were producing, you know, beats for people, I mean, they were unbelievable. They were these full-on production songs that were crafted. Now it's like, you give somebody 5 minutes on a laptop, they could produce whatever you're listening to on the radio right now.
And I think that's what I need to understand more, because I'm always in this mindset. I'm like, gotta have a good, strong work ethic and this and that. But it's like, with modern technology, you don't have to. You really don't have to. And you're right, it does a lot of the work for you. Back in the day, when you got these hip-hop dudes making beats, they're sampling records on turntables, taking drums out and things like that.
It's a lot of work.
Now it was a ton of work. And now it's like, they have plugins that do that. Like, you don't even have to work. And I sound like such an old person. I'm like, oh, no work ethic and everyone's lazy. But it's like in this modern industry, you don't have to have a work ethic per se.
Yeah.
You don't need the big studios anymore. You could be in your room with a laptop. And a lot of people are incredibly successful with that. And I would never take that away from them,
Right.
because it's just very different.
And we try and, at least, our recording style is like, yeah, we love the tech side of things, but we try and record every real instrument possible.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, I do not like to use MIDI because it just doesn't, it never sounds the same. It doesn't have that human element to it.
Well, I was going to say, what's my favorite F word? Because it lacks that.
Yeah, it's
the feel. It lacks the feel.
Yes,
That's my favorite F word.
Exactly. It's the that's the problem with it, and we try not to use it. But it's everybody has it now at their fingertips, and people use it. And and I think from what we learned in the production side of thing and the recording side, is you have all this technology at your hands. Doesn't mean you have to use it. You got these long things of MIDI channels and plugins, and I just think people need to put it in there because they have it.
Because it's there, yeah.
We're always less is more. It's like, does it sound good? Perfect. But it could sound good to some people, and they're like, well, this is my favorite plugin. I got to have this. Put that on there. It's like, leave it alone. So sometimes they overdo it with things. But that's just me. What do I know?
I agree. I mean, I'm like that when I talk about video or photography. It's like, it's got to look good in the camera before you do any editing to it, because a lot of people think you just edit. Yeah, everyone thinks you just edit and edit and edit, and then that's going to save. And it's like, dude, you have to be good at the initial step of it. So the recording has to be good before you put anything on it. It's got to sound just good, dry.
Yeah,
as they say. But I understand. That's my one thing, is I'm trying to be understanding of the modern industry or the modern outlook. But it's always very tough because the one thing we always talk about is, you have a lot of influencers nowadays, which is now I can't believe that's a term.
You said it.
I did say it's an occupation, and this is me just sounding like an old person, because you have anyone, like any of my students or anyone under 20, it's talking about doing their TikTok dances or whatever the hell. It's just a very weird time we're in now, where it's like, I look at the early 2000s and think, oh my God, someone can make a living off making videos on YouTube. That's incredible. But back then, people were making like very cool content and neat stuff. And now it's like people are making millions of dollars off of TikTok for just doing a dance that everyone else has done. So I just think the general public's just intake of content and media has just drastically changed to the point where it doesn't have to be anything original or super creative. It just has to be there, where it's like, I know that's a ton of people do on TikTok. They'll just scroll and they'll watch 1,000 people do the same fucking dance.
Yeah.
With the weird like alligator clapping hands, and then you have an old lady doing it, and then you got like a guy with no arms doing it or something. It's like, I get it, like it's fun, but it just kind of shows where we're at, where it's people do love just similarity. People love, there's no intricacy in it anymore. It's that. Like Pete wrote in saying, that easy way out, where it's just kind of, you're going to get fame on something like this.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, do you have dignity at that point? Because, I mean, I wouldn't want to jump on trends like that, for me personally, because it's like, that's probably a horribly stupid idea in this time we're living in. Because, like, I could just jump on a bandwagon and do something, make an idiot of myself on the internet, and probably get fairly popular. But I'd rather not, because it's not true to me, and it's not what I'd want to do, and it's not my craft. But I understand why people do it, and music is the exact same thing nowadays, because there's like, I have students play me so many artists, and I'll have no idea who they are, and they'll all sound the same. The vocal styles are the same, the writing's the same, the chord progression is the same, and like with a lot of the influencer stuff, and a lot of people just wanting to watch that same TikTok dance 18,000 times with people doing it, it's very similar with music, and I don't know, it kind of cheapens the craft for me personally.
Yeah,
I don't know. How do you feel about something? How do you feel about something like that, where it's just everyone doing the same thing? It's just that generalization where, I mean, you see it in every aspect of social media. You look on Instagram and it's every guy wants to look the same, every girl wants to look the same. They only like things that look like them. No one's like their own character, their own person. Like, I've never had a trend with me. I've always just wanted to I've dressed the same since like 5th grade. The pair of Vans, the jeans, the superhero shirt, and then whatever. I've never cared about conforming to like a social norm or a category. I mean, probably everyone looks at me like, this dude's very outdated and not hip, but it's like, that's just me. I mean, what do you feel about that? Where it's just this craving that everyone has, where it's like, gotta fit in, gotta be the same, gotta just, people think there's an individuality nowadays, but really it's like, I mean, we've seen it. We see the group of kids walk down the street and it's all the dudes with the buzz sides, big curly hair on top. They got a long sleeve shirt in the summer for some god awful reason. They're wearing way too short shorts with the cross logos on them. They got the socks that go up to the mid shin and the Adidas flip flops. I see flocks
I was
of
waiting
kids.
for it.
I see, yeah, you knew. I mean, I've seen flocks of kids like that everywhere, and yeah. I'm just always like, do they all call each other? Are they like, dude, you flopping today? We doing it? Yeah, we're doing it. And they all dress like that, or is it they see someone dressed like that because a lot of influencers look like that, and now they want to just look like that? I mean, it's like music, though, where it's like, we have to sound like this. We have to have that image. We have to sound like this. What do you think about that, this darker part of the internet, where now it's kind of like people are being stripped of their individuality, and they're just comparing themselves to everyone and having to go with it, and how's that affecting music? Sorry, that was an 18-part question, but good luck.
I know, I'm trying to write it
Your
all
time starts now.
Oh, the first bell. I mean, you're kind of already said it. I mean, the big thing about it is...
Yeah, but I want to hear you say it because you say it better, and you're more handsome.
Oh, thank you. You're not being yourself by doing it, and that is the problem. We talk a lot about this on the show, and it's about doing you, being you.
Gotta do you.
And you following these trends, and no matter, in any aspect, not even just music, you're not being yourself, and that's the problem. I'm probably the last person, or we're the last type of people to talk about this, because we don't follow anything. We don't like to follow trends, or we don't want to, make our music sound like anybody's. We want it to make it sound like our music, and that, that it sounds like we're playing it. And people get wrapped up in music a lot about trying to make it sound like somebody else's. And I'm doing everything I can to not do that. And because at the end of the day, it's still music, it's still subjective and objective and all the adjectives in between.
All the adjectives.
So it's there's no right or wrong, but it's like, if I'm, watching or, watching drum video or watching somebody else's play, I just see the comments and things like that of people, oh, I wish I could play that, I wish I could play just like him and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, you don't want to. That person already exists. There is already that individual. Nobody's ever going to be able to do that. Nobody is ever going to be able to replicate that. So why don't you just concentrate on doing you? And everybody has their own sound. Yeah. You have your own sound. I have my own sound. Could it be similar to some other people's? Yes, but it's not going to be 100%.
It's always just going to be you doing an impression of them. It's never going to be true. It never works like that.
Right. So
it's great you bring that up. I love that, because everyone's probably thinking, listen to these old grandpas just shitting on modern pop music. But it's not. You've always had this. We've always had this kind of instance where it's everyone trying to be everyone. Think how many bills we've been on with bands, on funk bills to play with, and it'll be like, oh, we're going to team you up with this other funk band, and they come on stage and just sound exactly like Tower of Power, to a T. And it's like, I don't like, that's like, I love, like, James Brown's my dude. I don't want to sound like him, because that's not who I am. I take a lot from everything I listened to and developed my own sound, not consciously, it just kind of happened, but it's like, I don't want to just sound like whoever with all this kind of stuff. I mean, the best example modern day of younger people is your absolute favorite band, which is Greta Van Fleet.
Oh, and man, it took long for that name to be mentioned.
I am sorry, because people have talked to me, especially a lot of older people and even younger people, who claim they sound very original, and they're not like Led Zeppelin in any way. And I am like, you are full of shit. That is a
funny.
blatant ripoff. It's that thing
One of
where
the
it's
best.
like the kid speaks normally. He starts to sing. He alters his voice to sound like Robert Plant. The bass lines, the drum parts, the guitar parts. It is a blatant ripoff. And this is in a modern day. They're ripping off a sound that was from the 60s and 70s. And that's how they got a lot of fame. Also, their parents had a lot of money. But it's one of those things where it's like, that's another example. That's another side of it. It's not just everything's got to sound the same for easy marketability, but they didn't know what to do on their own to get popular, so they do that. And it's almost they're infamous in that way, where it's people are like, yeah, they sound just like Led Zeppelin, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, which is just insane to have something like that, and people be like, yeah, I'm okay with this. That's just me, though. I don't know. I know you're very strongly outspoken on this as well. Not that I want to have a big dump session, but it is one of those things where it's like, as a musician working as hard as to craft a sound and things like that, you have literally someone come out of the woodwork because their parents have money and just rip off one of the biggest bands of all time. Not only rip them off, but everyone from our parents' generations love them because they're like, this is real music. They're doing the real sound. And it's just because it's all the people who go to see tribute bands and shit like that.
Yeah.
But
it's because they sound like
I'm going to have an aneurysm if we keep talking about it.
I know.
Yeah.
It's not healthy for us. But I get it. I mean, I get what you're saying completely. It's just, it's a shame. Because
it is. It's a weird spot, man. It's a weird spot we're in right now with music and just originality. I mean, you look at it too. It's like a lot of it's already been done, so it's really kind of tough to come out. It's either you do something original and it just doesn't hit, or you do something that sounds like someone else, and it's kind of like just do your own thing. But the problem is you got the big powers at the top running a lot of these, newer groups coming out in studios. That's why I love bands where it's like, yeah, we don't have a manager, we don't have a label, we're just doing our thing because they have all the control. Because you don't realize how much that production and sound isn't your own. It's someone in a studio telling you to do it, or they're making you sound like that. And that's kind of sad because that takes away from the artistry of it, and that's why you don't have half the sounds an artist. So it's like, it's not just, it's the marketability and simplicity of listening. They're telling you to do that, and that's kind of I don't know. I think it's kind of sad because you're losing that individuality and that artistry. But what do I know? I have a sideburn on the front of my face. I don't know. Don't listen to me.
Yeah. I'm not. I stopped listening.
No, but no. Go ahead.
Oh no. I was just saying. I mean, I think if people today, started to be more, of themselves and not following everybody else, I think you and I and, maybe some others would, I'd have a different opinion on today's music. I think I think a lot of our beef is that it's all the same. It all sounds the same. Yeah. And there's no individuality with it. If people started being themselves and writing and playing like themselves, I think we're going to, it's going to get more creative. It's just it's going to fix a lot of the issues, I think, in my opinion, with what we hear today.
I agree completely.
Yeah.
And I think the thing is, too, I'm always judging what's on the radio, where if people look elsewhere than just pop radio, you find that creativity. You find that talent. There's people doing, and young people, too, really young people, doing some absolute incredible musical things and just writing and recording, and just, it's fab. And it makes me happy because I thought for the longest time, modern pop radio, this is it. This is what we have. And it's like, no, you have to dig deeper than that. You don't look there. That's for the consumer to get easy, quick shit that sounds like everything else. There's people in their early teens making music on YouTube and things like that, and they are phenomenal vocalists and players, and that gives me hope, where it's like, we need more of those people. But it's a shame because they're never going to, as far as it looks like to be projected, aren't going to be on that giant major stage just because of they don't fit that cookie cutter, like you said. And that's kind of sad, because there is true talent out there. But right. I mean, that's all I have to say about all of this, because I sound like I was just dumping on this whole episode, but No,
that's why I just wanted, I thought it was worth a mention to just, I think people just need to be themselves, and And it's nothing that it's not like we don't like the sound of today's music. If you want to use virtual instruments, totally fine. Do what you got to do. That's not really my gripe. It's just all the same.
Yeah.
So like, and I think for an artist and longevity as a career, I think the ones that are the most successful and that have the longest career are the ones that have done their music from day one. It may be a long, rocky road, but they have the longevity. The ones that are the cookie cutter that sell out early, that are controlled, that are basically a puppet from the major label. You'll have a quick career for about 2 years, be super successful, and then you will disappear. I see
you'll
that
never
a lot.
hear from again.
Yeah.
All the time. And honestly, what you said about with virtual instruments and drum machines, kids out there listening, if you want to learn how to work a drum machine properly, listen to Quincy Jones, because he knows how to do a drum machine, because his stuff sounds still fresh as hell all these years later. But Will, I think you ended it lovely. I think that was just a kind of nice way to wrap this up. So I want to thank everyone again for listening to the Drop the Beat podcast this week. If you would like to write in a question again, go to charleslorita.com/contact and fill out the form, and we'll send you a free Mischief shirt if we pick your question and use it. So Pete, we're going to be sending you something into the old Toronto, Canada, which I think you're hopefully going to appreciate. Sadly, it's just a shirt. It's not a sweater, so you're still going to be a little cold. So still bundle layers.
I was going to say, we need to send him a winter coat.
I was going to say, but we're very appreciative you wrote, and this was a great topic. This was very different than anything we've actually done. It wasn't so much about the craft of music, but the modern state of it, which was very cool. If any of you guys listening would like to become one of our patrons and donate to us on Patreon, subscribe for our little monthly thing, we have a big orange button right on the main page of charleslorita.com that you can click. And if you do, we appreciate you immensely. And if you don't, we love you just the same. But in closing, this has been the Drop the Beat podcast. My name is Charles Laurita.
And my name is Will Sarver.
And thank you guys so much for listening and beating off with us.
See ya.
Later.